Shanklin Volunteer Youth and Community Centre, like so many, has wonderful memories for me. From meeting my friends and making lots of new ones, standing on TC Disco dance floor, to playing various fun games like jumping on the bouncy castle, creating arts and crafts, dressing up for Halloween, indoor tennis and much more. But how did this all start? Well, it starts way back in the 1960s with help from one man, Peter Woodmore.
Before we head back to what started as the Old Church Youth Club, we need to go back to the beginning of the Zion Bible Christian Chapel in Victoria Avenue. The chapel was opened in 1885 and lasted for approximately 50 years. It was taken over by a proud Yorkshireman, John Arthur Dixon. Dixon had moved to the island in 1927 and started a small printing works. It wasn't long before Dixon needed bigger premises and the old chapel was ideal. By the early 60s, the works in Victoria Avenue were closed. Just around the corner, 11 young people, led by teenager Leslie Weston, had started a new venture in the Old Church Village Hall. But the origin of the Shanklin Youth Club started much earlier. In fact, just 2 years after the end of the Second World War. Former Shanklin Mayor John Fleming remembers the early years.
When I was 13, 14, that's when I started to go to the Shanklin Youth Club, which was then at the bowling club, which is now. We went there till probably from 1950 to 56.
It was here in the 1950s that Peter Woodmore, with his soon-to-be wife Joy, had joined and found themselves helping. It became a shock in 1963 when the club was told to merge with Sandown Youth Club to become the Sandown and Shanklin Youth Club, based at Sandown Secondary Modern School.
In the meantime, the Methodist Club opened, which was started off at the church hall in Regent Street, the back of the church, and we attended there. But my main activity playing table tennis was at Grange Road. That's where we had serious things. In those days, they used to have the Isle of Wight Championships above the co-op.
The decision to close the old youth club angered Peter, but a new venture was about to come his and his recently married wife's way.
I was asked if I would like to help at the Shanklin Old Church Youth Club. We started there one night a week on a Friday night with a membership, I suppose then, of about 40 members in the old parish room in Shanklin, which was in Grange Road.
I joined the youth club and found it, very interesting. As I say, Phil Woodmore used to run it for many years in Grange Road, and eventually they moved to where they are now.
Bearing in mind this is 1963, at the age of the Beatles, I managed to find a group who were playing very much in the mood of the Beatles, and I got them to come along and play for us on Friday evenings. Of course, this soon got round that there was a good old dance going on at Shanklin Youth Club, or Shanklin Old Church Youth Club as it was then, and the membership grew from 40 when I started to round about 100, 120, and the parish room really wasn't able to cope with that amount of youngsters. As a result, it was on 2 levels, and the ceiling of the kitchen, which was underneath the main hall of the parish room, it fell down. The parish fathers weren't very, very thrilled with this, so they said, that's it, youth club has to go. Because we were told we had to get out, this was a complete disaster.
Having left the old church hall in 1964, Peter, along with help from Nigel Young and Erling Homburg, who was to stay with the centre until the 2000s, started the difficult task of finding a new premises.
I was driving along in Victoria Avenue one day, just after they told us we had to go, and I saw a for sale notice up on the old Victorian church there. So I inquired in the estate agents, Morrison Ledger, how much the church was up for sale for, and they said, well, that's for £1,650. £1,650? Well, we had £17 in the bank account then. So I said, right, we'll try and get this. When there's a will, there's a way, and with a lot of perseverance and help from the Department of Education and Science and the Gulbenkian Trust, the Isle of Wight Council, County Council, and the Department of Education and Science, we eventually raised the money and bought it.
But finding the money was going to be a problem. Thankfully, the owners of the property, Mr. and Mrs. Tolton, agreed to let the youth club move into the premises in February 1964 and deferred the payment until the end of 1965. Work started in developing the old Zion Chapel into a youth club. First was a coffee bar made up of a hole in the wall, but the money still had to be raised. The club went into action, first with the Carnival in July 1964. Jumble sales and a Battington Marathon soon followed, while on the 5th of August the fete was held on the Rectory Garden. But one of the biggest achievements came with a meeting with solicitor Mr. Green of Robinson, Jarvis and Rolfe, who helped the club to gain charity status. This was granted and still continues today. It was late in 1965 that news came in that a grant had been successful, which enabled the money to be paid to the church owners, giving the old Church Youth Club their very own premises. It wasn't long before the name was changed to the new Shanklin Youth Club, and things started to happen, including setting up teams in mixed road races, football for the boys and hockey for the girls. Other sports included cross-country, canoeing, swimming, tug-of-war and darts. But it wasn't just sports. The club also competed in the Youth Club Drama Festival and dressmaking competition.
Can't remember an awful lot. I can remember being the secretary. I think I must have been around sort of 18, 19. I can't sort of remember an awful lot because it was quite a while ago. Used to do a lot, but that was from Victoria Avenue when we first went there before all the alterations and everything was done. But we did a lot there. We enjoyed it. Didn't have any of the top part of it. I can just remember being at the bottom as you went in. It was more like a church hall really when you went in.
It was.
Which it was. Can't remember an awful lot, but it was nothing like it is now. I mean, you've done so much work and so much love's gone into it. But it was a good hub. You know, we had a lot of children there, and we had good fun.
Under the guidance of Peter Woodmore, the youth club thrived, totally self-sufficient and run by volunteers. It was in 1967 the club saw its first marriage by two of the members, with the wedding of John Phillips and Alison Melraith. 5 years later, the new floor was completed. A year earlier, in 1971, a young 16-year-old Paul Biddlecombe joined the club. With the new upstairs being completed, part of the downstairs was converted into a disco, with new lighting and equipment being installed, and Paul Biddlecombe becoming the club's first ever DJ. Throughout these times, many young people passed through the doors, with some going on to bigger things, like Cheryl Mortimer and Leslie Young, who went on to appear on many of the Benny Hill shows as part of the group Hill's Angels. The youth club didn't spend all its time inside. Whenever possible, they liked to get out and about in the community and join in with activities around Shanklin, which helped with raising funds for the club. One of the activities the young people enjoyed was flyby nights. Groups would go out into the dark for team building orienteering.
I can always remember going on a walk. We had to go onto the mainland for it in Northallerton, across Findingdales, called the Lightweight Walk. The weather was absolutely atrocious, but where I'd done a lot of scout hiking and things, didn't find it too bad. But it was called the Coffin Walk, and eventually finished it. And I think there was about 200 kids or lads and ladies doing it, and I think 10 of us finished it in the end, but the weather was absolutely atrocious.
The Big Mead near to St Blasius Church was also used by the young people for football and other sporting activities. Former Shanklin Mayor Linda Fleming, as secretary of the youth club, remembers Peter.
I can remember Pete being there. He was just such a lovely man. Can't always remember an awful lot of things, but he was always there, and he was always there for everybody. He did so much for everybody. Just, and his wife. Yeah, nice people.
The club went from strength to strength through the 70s with almost 1,000 members. With this amount, the club was split into 5 age groups. These were named onions, sprouts, radishes, turnips and spuds. With new leaders Bridget Lake, Martin Hill, Paul Biddlecombe, Nick Spiker and Mike Ledger. 1976, alterations were made to the disco setup and it was given a new name, the Disconnect.
OK, stand by everybody, here we go. Julie and Clegg's breakfast show just ending, Judy doing the traffic and travel, and us with our allo at the beginning of the show.
Somebody to benefit from this was 12-year-old Alex Dyke, who as a club member picked up a microphone for the first time and learnt the art of being a DJ with help from Paul Biddlecombe. Alex was to go on, of course, to have a very successful radio career. In 1977, another wedding was to be seen at the club as Paul Biddlecombe married Bridget Lake, with the members giving the couple a guard of honour using hockey sticks. Hockey sticks and large obstacles again came in handy as the youth club took part in various games based on the popular BBC TV show It's a Knockout, with Womble, Uncle Bulgaria, as its mascot. A year later, the club was to reach a pinnacle when it was named Youth Club of the Year. And it was in 1980, 4 club members, Laurie Gavigan, Keith Meadows, Laurie Yelling and Grant Salmon, visited the BBC's Broadcasting House on November the 11th, with then Isle of Wight MP Steve Ross to take part in the Radio 1 Talk About London programme. As the Shanklin Youth Club entered the 1990s, things were starting to look very tired. The membership had dwindled and the club needed refreshing.
The club had tremendous years through the 70s, was massive, with 80 odd members over the age of 18 at one point. Fell on bad times in the 80s and early 90s, and this current group of leadership came back into being in 1996, when we completely gutted the whole building, which for those who have been inside this building is a lot bigger than it looks. It's taken us numerous years to get to the condition that it's in now. We are completely voluntary sector. We've got some tremendous support from the community at large, of which a large proportion of themselves were members in the 70s, and obviously now I've got businesses within the town or the surrounding area of Shanklin.
It was 3 past members who'd grown up with the club from the 70s that agreed to take control. Paul and Bridget Biddlecombe, Richard Priest and Julie Nixon, but funds were needed. Former High Sheriff Judy Griffin remembers when she was asked to visit in June 1996 as part of Volunteer Week.
I remember being taken outside the first time I went there to be shown round, and there were heaps of rubble. The old Methodist chapel, I think it was. And I remember thinking, what on earth can they do with this place? And I know that you closed the youth club in the May of that year, so you worked throughout the summer in order to get you called it refurbishment, I should think it was more like rebuilding, but to get it ready for October the 12th, 1996. And because I was High Sheriff, I got drawn into that, and I'm so pleased and glad, and it was a great privilege to be there at that time.
Work took a few months to complete, with local volunteers and businesses coming in to help.
and I had to come along with my overalls one day and join in with those amazing volunteers, well, let's say the Priest family, the Biddlecombe family, and I had to paint a bit of wall. I don't think I did a very good job, but never mind, I tried.
When the work was complete, it was decided a new name should be used to fit with the direction the club was now going. So Shanklin Youth Club reopened as the Shanklin Voluntary Youth and Community Centre, better known as SVYCC. The new centre was officially opened on Make a Difference Day on the 12th of October 1996.
You said that you've never been.
That was a great honour to be invited to do that, and I know what I said on that occasion because it was in the county press, and I've got the cutting from the county press. Forgive me if I just read that little bit because I copied it down. And I actually said, I know for a fact that the volunteers, those two families in particular that I mentioned, have been working until 3:30 this morning, and they were back at 6 o'clock this morning. And God knows what they were doing. There are no words to say how wonderful this project is and how hard you've all worked. And that still stands. Having been given about 10 minutes warning that I was to give a presentation this morning, and having scribbled a few notes on the back of envelopes, I thought, well, what more could I expect? Because I know for a fact that Richard and all the others have been here working on this place until 3:30 this morning, and then they were back at 6 o'clock this morning.
Now a community centre, it had to decide what to do about the old youth club. This was to continue, but rebranded with a new membership and club name. It was here that TC's was born, with Mark Biddlecombe and Kylie McDermott as the first official members. It was in December 1997 that the club had another wedding. This time, the newlyweds were club members and now volunteers Judy Nixon and Perry Lever, with 10-year-old Catherine Ann as a bridesmaid. Since the refurbishment, the centre has gone from strength to strength, becoming a major hub for the Shanklin community, with the youth of Shanklin and the Bay being at its heart. Now operating as a community centre, it wasn't long before other organisations were knocking on the door, which helped with the funding. Other ways to raise money came from various fairs held at the Shanklin Church of England Primary School, today known as St Pelagius Academy, which attracted help from the likes of Isle of Wight Radio's Andy Shier, Carry On star Jack Douglas, Countess Mountbatten, cricketer Derek Underwood, and many more.
And I think I'm right in saying Countess Mountbatten was there. These people came because they could see the value of this project and wanted to give you the support. But I do remember that, I called it a Victorian fair, but it was a care fair, I think. But anyway, there was Countess Mountbatten.
The success of SVYCC could clearly be seen in TC's, as the number of members grew very quickly, and with charity status more grants could be secured. This helped with further improvements, further upgrading the disco equipment and the lighting. New game consoles were added, and in 2012 a gym on a newly built third floor, including one project Judy Griffin remembers well, the Scalextrics.
And that was upstairs in the games room. Just extraordinary how really you've all thrown your lives into this project and developed it and still developing it. Year after year you come up with something new, and I know that young people who went to the old youth club so many years ago and now their children are coming now to this wonderful facility, which I think is used by other parts of the community as well.
Distinctive from the traditional youth club, members of TC's have always taken an active role in the centre, from organising Christmas parties for the older generation and fundraising as part of Shanklin Carnival. countless disco specials for Halloween to comic relief. It was in October 2006 the young people helped artist Jess McGraw to create the mural that can be seen on the front of the building today. Richard Priest, now the Mayor of Shanklin, embarked on his next big adventure with SVYCC right at its heart, to twin Shanklin with a town in France. It wasn't long before Shanklin was twinned with a town 34 miles from Paris, Coubray. The Shanklin Mayor, with guests and members from TCs, headed for a weekend in the French town, which included time at the nearby theme park Disneyland Paris. As we already know, sport has been an important part of the centre, especially football. And it was no surprise when SVYCC FC was formed, with members playing for the team in the Island League at the Fairway in Sandown. At the end of the 2013-2014 season, the team folded. One of the things that the centre is proud of is its partnerships it's formed over the years with other organisations, like Shanklin Carnival, Shanklin Library, and Queen's Award for Voluntary Service winner, Green Towns.
Having got the club back on its feet and got some relative success, it was very, very pleasing to be nominated as one of the best youth clubs in England. We eventually were narrowed down to one of the best two in 2007, and we went up to Lloyd's of London for a presentation, and we did eventually win. So it was quite a rare event for those of us not into black tie and evening gowns for the ladies. But the presentation itself was quite an eye-opener, because the committee passed comment that they thought we were probably one of the biggest clubs in England that was voluntary sector. In fact, they were quite amazed at what we managed to achieve.
I got involved with the youth club about 16 years ago. When we were refitting the building, because it needed quite a lot of spending on it. I had young children at the time, and it seemed an ideal time really for just to get involved and obviously help them along. We tend to take on a Friday night, which is our busiest nights.
With the hard work of all those like former Mayor John Gilby, who volunteered their time over the years to create and help make the Shanklin Youth Club, and then later SVYCC, this success can clearly be shown by the awards it's won over the years, including 4 National Children Youth Centre of the Year awards, the Home Office Award, Queen's Award for Voluntary Service, Hampshire Youth Club of the Year Award, and the Shahida Award, as well as many more. The pinnacle of all these came on the 27th of March 2014, when the centre had a visit from His Royal Highness Prince Edward.
No regrets, just love. We can dance until we die. You and I will be young forever. You make me feel like I'm living a teenage.
Prince Edward wasn't the only royal engagement the centre has had. There have been visits to the Queen's Garden Party. Paul Biddlecombe awarded the British Citizens Award. Bridget Biddlecombe awarded the Whitbread Volunteer Action Award, and Richard Priest becoming an OBE. For over 6 decades, Shanklin's community has had this centre at its heart. This all made possible by the wonderful hard work of its volunteers, which can be seen by the amount of people of influence and celebrities that over the years have given up their free time to help and inspire the youth of the Bay. Today, SVYCC legacy still continues, with members past and present helping in the making of historical Isle of Wight films under the banner of its own YouTube channel, Growing Up in the Bay. These include 3 films on Shanklin, 100 years of the Shanklin Memorial, the war years in the Bay, and most recently an Island Olympic adventure, with more films in the pipeline. In this film, we've spoken about those like Peter Woodmore, the Biddlecombe and Priest families, but also the many other volunteers who've given up their time over the last 6 decades, and without whom this story could not have achieved what it has today. For the future, we do know the centre has always evolved and developed, with leadership coming from within. Long may it continue.
I do wish you all the very, very best and future success, because Shanklin Youth and Community Club has the foundations of stalwarts of the local community there who will never, ever give up working for the community. And I do congratulate you. I thank you, really, if I'm allowed to say thank you, on behalf of the community for doing this. And long may it continue. And congratulations and well done, all of you.
After 18 months of COVID and its doors tightly shut, it's great to see that it's reopening again as a community centre, with the likes of the South White Youth Theatre, Spotlight, Aikido, Judo, table tennis and the Thursday Club for the Grey Brigade. As for the future of TCs, that is still to be resolved. But I'm sure, somewhere, sometime in the future, the laughter and cheers of the Shanklin Youth will be heard once again.